You've probably heard Europe is slapping tariffs on Chinese EVs to protect millions of jobs from a wave of cheap imports. But what if it does the exact opposite? What if these tariffs aren't protection at all? What if it's a slow economic trap that turns giants like Volkswagen and BMW into zombie automakers while handing China control over Europe's digital and industrial future? The worrying part? It might already be too late. As of 2025, Europe's automotive industry employs around 13.8 million people. Germany alone accounts for over 700,000 of those jobs, making cars one of the backbone industries of the entire country. Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW, those are iconic names defining the industry, and that kind of brand power doesn't come cheap. Except there is a new name threatening the industry. In 2025, the German auto sector lost over 51,000 jobs, around 7% of the entire workforce gone in a single year, a direct hit to one of the country's most important industries. And for many, the blame points in one direction. Meet the BYD Dolphin, a small plug-in hybrid that's quietly starting to show up in markets across Europe. It's aimed at the exact buyers most German auto companies built their entire system around. Everyday drivers looking for something affordable, efficient, and modern, and it sells for just $26,000 to $28,000. That is cheap and disruptive. It's one of the first mass-market models BYD designed specifically for global expansion out of China. For drivers, it was seen as a salvation. For automotive companies, a threat. In 2024, the EU followed suit from the US and imposed tariffs ranging from 17% to 38% on Chinese electric vehicles. Surprisingly, Germany's center-left government voted against this proposal, mainly because their own auto industry was worried about economic retaliation. It was another move in a growing pattern, industrial powers tightening the screws on each other, each trying to slow the other one down. But the market didn't slow. EV demand in Germany kept climbing anyway, and the biggest winner of all was China. And that's where things start to get confusing. Because if these tariffs are meant to protect the German car market, why are some of the biggest CEOs in the industry now warning the European Union to back off? Ola Källenius, CEO of Mercedes-Benz, has been at the forefront of modernizing the company, and part of that has been a pivot to electric cars. He's long been a strong supporter of hybrid and fully electric models, so after taking over, he spearheaded a $12 billion investment into battery-powered vehicles. Källenius doesn't seem to view China as a threat, but as a partner. Källenius was brought along on an official Germany state visit to China in 2024. It was seen as a statement that Germany was open to collaborating with the Chinese companies on new automotive initiatives. And while he's the most vocal face for this initiative, he's far from alone. The boards of Volkswagen and BMW have both been strongly opposed to any proposed tariffs, with the companies frequently sending trade ambassadors to China. But it's not politics, it's profit. While German automakers are in direct competition from Chinese manufacturers, the two nations are economically intertwined, more than people realize. German automakers traditionally derive more than 30% of their profits from the Chinese market, where Western cars are still a hot commodity among the upper class. The liberalization of China's economic system in the last few decades has made the country an economic powerhouse. It's said that if China sneezes, the entire German DAX index catches a cold. So for companies like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz, China isn't just another market, it is one of the biggest sources of profit they have. But they're also held hostage by it. And that raises a real question. If European automakers are so dependent on that relationship, how are Chinese EVs still able to undercut them on price so aggressively? UBS Investment Bank is one of the preeminent sources of anything related to financial and industrial analysis. The company's Teardown series dug into the finances of BYD shortly after the Chinese company broke into the European market. Since 2020, China has emerged as one of the biggest beneficiaries of the global economic shakeup. The country has transformed itself from a net importer of cars to the world's largest exporter. BYD's Atto 3, their first heavily exported model, was enough to turn the entire car market on its head. And there was one little secret behind it all. In 2023, Chinese electric vehicles already had a 25% cost advantage over many of their legacy competitors. Anytime a company comes in with a major cost advantage, it shakes up the field, as long as they can sustain it. It's common for new companies to start with loss leaders. They push aggressively lower prices to draw customers in and then either raise prices later or bleed money until they can't sustain it. And that usually comes with a catch, because once prices go up, the early waves of buyers disappear. But with BYD, that pattern doesn't seem to be playing out in the same way. It's all about owning the right pieces of the puzzle. BMW, Mercedes, and Volkswagen may be German brands, but today almost everything is a global process. From the raw steel that makes up the cars to the computer chips that control its complex dashboard system, a car isn't built in one part. The auto plants are more likely to assemble prefabricated parts brought in from around the world. China has already been offering a low-cost alternative for manufacturing for years, giving it a clear role in almost every economy around the world. And for most auto manufacturers, only around 30% of parts are manufactured in-house. BYD plays a very different game. Instead of outsourcing most of its supply chain, it produces roughly 75% of its components internally, thanks to China's well-established industrial sectors. That has many advantages. It helps keep the costs down thanks to a lack of import fees and transport costs. It's the equivalent of buying a pre-built Lego set from abroad and owning the Lego factory. This gives Chinese electric vehicles a manufacturing cost and speed advantage that's hard to compensate for. They can pass those savings right on to the customer. And that gives them a lot of money to throw around. In 2023, the company was able to increase its R&D spending by 97%. That played a key role in the development of the Dolphin, an even more affordable model designed to move their brand worldwide. The company's stock price began to skyrocket, and even today it continues to climb. But questions still linger about its future in Western markets amidst tariffs and political pressure. However, that isn't slowing it down. BYD has bigger plans, and Europe is firmly in its crosshairs. BYD has a plan, and it goes far beyond cars. It all comes down to the vision of one man, Wang Chuanfu, the founder of BYD. Unlike the many legacy auto companies, BYD only dates back to 1995. It doesn't have an established reputation for quality to fall back on. In fact, it started as a mobile phone battery company and only entered the automobile market in 2003. Now it's making up for lost time. Chuanfu has been courting some of the most powerful investors in the world ever since he launched his company, receiving a $230 million investment from Warren Buffett in 2008. He quickly became a billionaire, which allowed him to create a path to become the leader in the Chinese automotive market. The company was able to weather China's government's reduction of electric vehicle subsidies. But Chuanfu's biggest innovation might be happening under everyone's nose. Right now, the biggest roadblock to BYD's determination to break into the European market in force is logistics. Europe has a robust car market of its own, and even without tariffs, the cost of transporting large machines to another continent is a stumbling block to any major company. In order to truly take over the European auto market, BYD will have to solve its supply and manufacturing issues. It may have figured out a way to do that in a way that takes advantage of Europe's decline, and it might be happening under everyone's nose. In 2026, word broke that BYD was in talks to purchase a selection of manufacturing plants that weren't heavily in use. While the big three of German automakers are still healthy, plenty of other European automakers have fallen on hard times. BYD would take over those plants, and then suddenly they would be able to bring their assembly line, mass production-oriented style of manufacturing to the European mainland. For those who wanted Chinese cars, they would be more accessible than ever. For those who didn't, well, they might not know. The plant takeover is just one part of BYD's plan. The other is to acquire the dormant brands, reskinning their cars and creating a new line of European cars, all with Chinese technology, money, and design at the core. This has already been done, with Italian companies like DR Automobiles using defunct Italian car names like Italia to rebadge vehicles from Chinese brands that are less well known in the West. These have been nicknamed zombie brands. It's a model that, when paired with BYD's low costs and wide appeal, could be a deadly blow to the industry. So why isn't the car industry acting like it? Why are European regulators the only ones who seem to be panicking? The most popular electric model in the Volkswagen stable is the ID.4, and it's become notorious for its complex software system and how long it takes to fix when anything goes wrong. We've all had that moment where the cell phone or computer demands a software update at the most inconvenient time. Cars that do the same can provide a bigger hassle. Users often complain of patches for software glitches taking months to roll out, sometimes requiring a visit to the dealership to get the car back in working order. Which is why BYD is working to not just be cheaper, but faster. BYD may have been one of the first major EV manufacturers to emerge from China, but it didn't stay alone for long. Companies like NIO quickly followed, targeting the higher end of the market with SUVs and premium electric vehicles that were still cheaper than many Western rivals. But the real advantage was the software. Chinese EV companies built their cars more like tech products than traditional automobiles. The software, batteries, and user experience were designed to work together from the start. It's been described as the equivalent of waiting for a letter in the mail to get an update for a Volkswagen compared to clicking on a smartphone update to get a Chinese equivalent. Because despite the cars rolling off the assembly lines, these companies increasingly think like software firms first, and automakers second. This is one of the biggest advantages China has right now over its Western competition. The century-old automakers that dominated the industry for decades had to be dragged into the internet age kicking and screaming. They weren't built for a software-first world, and for a long time neither were many of their customers. By contrast, BYD and its Chinese competitors were created in 1995, when software and internet technology were already locked in as a part of everyday life. Their software is built for the car, ready to be seamlessly updated as needed as you commute to work. But why exactly does a commuter car need such advanced technology? For the most dramatic example of just how far ahead of the game Chinese software is, we gotta look at one of the highest-end cars out there. The Xiaomi SU7 Max sedan can go from 0 to 62 miles per hour in just 2.78 seconds thanks to its dual-motor setup. It's the kind of performance once associated with the elite European sports brands. But it wasn't what was under the hood that got people's attention. The car is packed with advanced sensing hardware, including a 128-line LiDAR system. Short for light detection and ranging, the technology uses pulsed lasers to map the world around the vehicle in real time, helping the car analyze traffic, obstacles, and road conditions with extreme precision. What really stood out, though, was the sheer amount of power behind it. The vehicle has 11 high-definition cameras feeding into dual NVIDIA Drive Orin chips capable of processing 508 trillion operations per second. This isn't just powerful technology for a car, it is a powerful technology for everything. Each Xiaomi SU7 Max has more processing power than the guidance computers on 500 Tomahawk missiles combined. This is smart technology disguised as a car. Every one of these cars that's brought into a country will essentially be a super fast, super smart computer sharing the roads with hundreds of thousands of older models. This has led to a new generation of cars, software-defined vehicles. These cars weren't designed like traditional automobiles with software added later. They were built around software from the very beginning. In many of the newest models, AI systems sit at the center of the driving experience, controlling everything from navigation and safety features to battery optimization and autonomous assistance. The hardware matters, but increasingly the software is the product. That changes the entire manufacturing model. Instead of the factory being the heart of the company, it becomes the final assembly point in a much larger tech ecosystem. And in China, that approach is quickly becoming the standard for the future of the auto industry. But why does a civilian vehicle need more processing power than military hardware if all it's gonna do is drive to the grocery store? At first, the move by the Chinese market into the European car market seemed like it was pretty straightforward. European car makers were turning out expensive old-school cars that didn't suit the tastes or budget of today's customers. Not only was the new generation of adults struggling to make ends meet, but they were very climate conscious and not likely to want to buy a gas guzzler. China's sleek, mass-produced electric car seemed like a natural fit for the market, and the demand has already been shown. Except those numbers don't quite add up anymore. China has already had a foothold in the European car market, with extensive trade between both sides. Suddenly, this seemed to be perceived as a problem in a way it never had been before. European governments weren't just worried about losing market share, they were worried about losing control of one of their most important industries altogether. That fear pushed them toward tariffs on Chinese EVs. It was a move that didn't just threaten to disrupt the car market, but risked triggering a much larger trade war between the two deeply connected economies. Because once tariffs start escalating, they rarely stay contained to one industry. Modern Chinese electric vehicles aren't just cars with batteries instead of gas tanks. They're not even the high-tech computerized cars that come from companies like Tesla today. Every Chinese electric vehicle on European streets is coming in with a level of technology that essentially makes it a mobile data center. They map the terrain around it and create an in-depth schematic of every mile it drives. That map becomes a part of the computer's data for future drives. But no one is sure if it stays there. Over the last few years, cybersecurity experts have become increasingly interested in the study of connected vehicle telemetry. It combines the real-time transmission of GPS, engine statistics, and user data, ostensibly under strict cybersecurity safeguards. But while these machines come with protections against hacking and data breaches from outside sources, nobody is sure if the same can be said for internal sources. President Xi has tightened state control over strategic industries, ensuring every company still has deep dealings with the Chinese government. These cars are learning about Western infrastructure better than many of the people who live around it. Their presence on the roads of Europe is only set to grow as the low-cost cars make a bigger impact. They're on the verge of not just owning the market, but owning the roads. So why is Europe suddenly so determined to stop Chinese EVs in their tracks? Especially after spending decades outsourcing huge parts of global manufacturing to the East, while its own industrial base slowly weakened along the way. Now China sees an opening and Europe sees a threat. That's what makes the tariff response so risky. They're often described as a kind of economic high-stakes gamble. Once one side starts raising the barriers, the other side almost always responds. Prices rise, supply chains tighten, and both economies absorb the damage. But the EU isn't backing down because this isn't about cars at all. The tariffs are likely to speed up the decline of European car companies and leave the manufacturers open to takeovers. But the electric car wars are actually an elaborate proxy for an ongoing battle over software sovereignty. The Chinese electric car influx isn't just adding a new option to the car market in Europe, it's bringing in millions of mobile data centers to the roads of Europe. And they're potentially transmitting schematics about all of Europe across the sea back to the parent company. And amid the economic battle, a war over electric cars is being waged as a proxy for a larger data war. But it might already be too late. Europe's tariffs are a 20th century weapon against a 21st century target. While it builds walls to keep cars out and preserve its manufacturing plants, a digital Trojan horse may have already come in through the front gate. It's not the only area where some high-stakes deception is in the works. Check out 12 US scientists have gone missing or died. What's going on? To uncover the dark truth about the biggest mystery in the science world. Or watch this video instead.